You can. He's gonna hold it up for you. Yeah.
First of all, I'd like to say I appreciate everybody coming out here. And it's such a beautiful and diverse crowd. And I'm truly honored to be here and speak. Like they say, if you're silent, you're compliant. And I'm just an African-American male, born in America, raised in Reading, Pennsylvania. I experienced racism in the educational system, employment, politically. I was profiled numerous times. I probably contributed to Reading's economy in the 90s for being fined and pulled over, racially profiled. It goes out to West Reading. I remember cops to this day, if I see them, who pull me over for no unknown reason, fabricating stories. And luckily I'm alive and I'm still here.
Yeah!
You know, I wrote some notes. I may just go off the cuff or go on a tangent, but just bear with me. And I'll probably be reiterating some of the things the young lady just spoke about. But this rally isn't about being anti-police, anti-law enforcement, or anti-white for that matter. It takes a village to raise a city. And we're that village right now. And what's ironic, when I'm coming up here, first song that played on my radio was, "A change is gonna come." And change is not easy. So that's why we're all out here, I believe, because we want change in this system. And it is systematic, whether you want to believe it or not. I'm gonna start off now, if you don't mind. There are many reasons that have brought us here today. The main one being is that it's June 19th, otherwise known as Freedom Day. And I'm not trying to offend anybody. These are just my words that are coming from the heart. On this day in 1865, slaves were finally notified that they were no longer actually the ownership of their slave masters. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed January 1st, 1863. So for almost another 2 years, slaves were being murdered, raped, and made for profit, basically. The murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery have galvanized not only black people, but people from all over the world. When you have a mixture of conflict and chaos, it creates violence. But as I can see and look around, I notice I don't believe anybody's here for violence. America is receiving the results of this violence. It is perpetrated on African Americans since being brought to this country in 1619. You can't live in a supposed just society and keep committing acts of aggression and violence against the people who have just as much right to be here than any race in this country, because we helped build it, bled, and died for it. My grandmother, great-grandmother had 6 sons. 5 of them fought in, I believe it was World War II, and 1 fought in the Korean War. So they sacrificed their lives for this country. And I say, America, wake up. Racism is a part of America's culture, and African Americans have been the recipient of it for more than 400-something odd years. There's not another race in this country that has been subjugated to so much cruelty and vitriol because of the color of their skin. Reading, PA is a city that is no different from any other in America, and it also has a history of racism and bigotry that goes back many years. But the media in this town seems to forget about it, and some African Americans want to forget about it. Growing up as a kid, we were terrorized for a few years in Reading because there was a faction of the Ku Klux Klan that operated out of South 4th Street. Up here, I think they used to call it South Mountain area, they used to hold their rallies. One of my cousins actually had his arm blown off in the city of Reading because the Ku Klux Klan used to put homemade bombs in paper bags and jewelry boxes, and he just so happened to pick up a paper bag that he saw, and he had half his arm blown off. But as we know, racism is a touchy subject. It makes people uncomfortable. If there's going to be any type of reform in the law enforcement community and our judicial system, it's going to have to deal with the race issues that continue to plague this country and America and Reading, PA also. People need to feel uncomfortable.
Right.
There was an incident right here that could have resulted in a young man losing his life at the hands of the police in Reading. Jason Halsey was beaten and tased a few times in what appeared to be the use of excessive force. Tanisha showed this video to me, and it was very disturbing. I believe he was hit and kicked maybe 15 something odd times, and he was tasered. Now, if you know, when you get tasered, the state police officer instructing a class, and he showed me when you get tasered. You get tasered, you lose all sense of being. And that electricity running through you, I'm thinking, how could this man comply when he's getting tased and kicked, and they're saying, don't resist, don't resist. But that electricity going through you is a shocker, and you lose all sense of being. And as we see in a lot of these cases, the district attorneys and coroners when needed are complicit in the belief that police can do no wrong and are justified in their murders. This is not an affront to all police officers, just the bad apples that spoil the bunch. Because there are some police officers who do a fine job. But the ones who break the law they're supposed to uphold need to be punished like anyone else to the law's full extent.
Woo! Yeah.
African Americans are tired and fed up with the system that when it was created did not have us in mind. When the Constitution was written, the African American man, woman, and child were not on the mind of this.
Hello. All right, here we go. Constitution was written, the African American man, woman, and child were not on the minds of this country's forefathers, because at that point we were still in chains. It was said that the government exists to serve the people, and I take that to mean local and state. But at times the only serving we got were ass whoopings, abuse, and false promises from local, state, and the federal government.
Right.
The winds of change are coming as a result of these recent murders. I am not clairvoyant and neither am I psychic, but to see white, brown, red, acknowledge that this system needs to be fixed is truly inspiring. Yes. America, you need to wake up.
Woo! Yep. Yes.
America needs a solution and needs to find answers on the problem of race and how it has affected this country like a disease which needs a cure. If the federal government, along with state and local governments, would have enforced the laws they made from the beginning and viewed African Americans as human beings rather than animals, this country might not be in the situation it is in as a result to one's skin color. This country has reached a turning point as it relates to police shootings and white men killing innocent African Americans. And if you know, history tends to repeat itself, and I'm gonna sort of expound on a few deaths that happened recently and deaths that happened in the past. Numbers are significant. George Floyd, May 25th, 2020. Corporal Roman Duckworth Jr., April 9th, 1962. Both murdered by a white police officer. Corporal Roman Duckworth was organizing a civil rights march and he was shot. Tamir Rice, November 22nd, 2014, shot by a white police officer when he was 12 years old. Emmett Till, August 28th, 1955, 14 years old, shot and brutally murdered at the hands of white men. Breonna Taylor, March 13th, 2020, shot 8 times by police officers, 26-year-old. Viola Greg Liuzzo, shot by Klansmen because she was a volunteer civil rights worker. And yes, she was a white woman out here for the cause. June 17, 2015, Dylan Roof murders 9 churchgoers in Charleston, South Carolina. Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Cal Robertson, and Cynthia Wellesley. 16th Street church bombing, murder. You can't even go to church these days.
Right.
Without supremacists and extremists committing these heinous crimes. And Berks County is a hub for extremism, whether people know it or not. Ahmaud Arbery, February 23rd, 2020, murdered by 2 white men while jogging. September 25th, 1961, Herbert Lee, civil rights leader, killed by a state legislator. The murder was witnessed by Lewis Allen,
another African American who was
later
later
murdered. No one was arrested.
When I
Seen the video of George Floyd, very disturbing.
and I
Sort of want to use this analogy if I
get it correct.
We are part of the animal family. He was a human being. You know, when a predator kills his prey and he gets them
Up around the
throat or whatever area, they sort of relax and they're comfortable. And that's what appeared to be the case with this officer who was on his neck, nonchalant, and he just seemed like he had his prey
Exactly.
kneeling on his neck. And animal knows and senses
when that animal's about to die.
Yeah.
Same thing with Ahmaud Arbery. Like they were on a safari hunt, tracking him down. Sad, very sad. I ask you, does this seem like a systematic problem? See if you can get through reading 1,000 Years of Lynching, which documents newspaper and first-hand accounts of lynchings, rapes, kidnappings, disappearances, and murders of African American men, women, and children. Be the change that this country needs, and do not be a wallflower or sideline watcher. Believe it or not, more voices need to be heard and action must be taken. Do not be scared citizens to speak up or be seen just because you're afraid of what your neighbors or white peers will say, or peers for that matter in general. The hell with that. Like the Panther said, either you're part of the solution or you're part of the problem.
All right. So, is there anyone else who wants to talk right now, or do y'all want to get marching?
Let's get marching. 5 minutes.
Oh yeah. Someone wants to talk right here. What do you say? What am I doing? I know.
Thank you, sweetheart. To God be the glory. For without his wisdom and his will and his plan, none of us would have breath in our lives. None of us would be alive today. The lives matter that God has established on this earth. And as you stand here representing all the people, I give the glory to him because he's the one who orchestrated this. Life and death belongs to God. Let's say that. Life and death belongs to God. Now, the how that we live is the most important thing. We are designed as human beings, unlike any other creation of the Almighty, to have reason and to have love operating in our lives. Now, if you're not loving yourself, if you're not loving your family, if you're not loving the humanity, then you have work to do. And I say, let's do it. Out here today shows me that you are loving people. To take the time out of your day and not feel that it was robbery to come and support this cause. But gentlemen, ladies, we have a bigger cause. As we stand here today, we need you to become the lawmakers. As the Constitution tells us that we live in a country that the laws, the country, the government is what? For the people, by the people, and of the people. Now, if you don't believe that, then we have a big problem. Now, I ask you, how many of you voted in this last election? Raise your hands high. Okay, thank you. Give yourselves a hand. Give yourselves a hand. Yes. How many of you did not vote in this last election? And it's okay, let's be honest, we're living in truth. Yes, okay. Okay.
We all have our reasons.
So your reasons are important. But do you know the people who lived and died? So you would have that privilege. Let's give honor to those people who were the martyrs, who gave their life so that we could have the freedoms of today. The freedom to gather, the freedom to express ourselves, the freedom to carry and bear arms, the freedom to vote our choice, the freedom to change government when we want to, the freedom to live our sexual orientation as we need to. Only in America, people. And I'm so glad that we're waking up out of the Rip Van Winkle sleep. And for some of you little young people who don't know who Rip Van Winkle was, I want you to look it up and thank yourselves for waking up. Now I have something very important to say to all of you. How many of you in this group are African descendants? Who said that? Who said that? Raise your hand high. She said we all are. Amen. It's been proven since 1982 that our human cell is made up of the skin of the cell called the mitochondria. The mitochondria is the contribution of your mother. They discovered that contribution comes from an African female, long before she was called African, but always from the female. So today, my brothers and sisters, your Black Lives Matter, okay? Because all of us are descendants of the dominant gene, every single one of us. I don't know what you look like, but you are a part of the big DNA picture. So make no mistake, my brothers and my sisters, that we have work to do. No matter what the hue of our skin color is, color of our hair, Martin Luther King said it's the content of your character that's important. And the fact that you're standing for justice is very important. Now, I got a homework assignment for you. I want you to go to the Constitution. I want you to look up the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment says that slavery and indentured servitude is abolished except when, that's part B, except when you are convicted of a crime. So if you want to stop slavery in America, the abuses of murder and systemic oppression, let's get busy on updating our living document of our Constitution of the United States, the most powerful document in the history of the world. Call your legislators, call your senators. Hi, Judy. I thought I saw Judy Schwenk here. I already gave her that challenge, that I want her to create a bill that pays reparations to Black people for their damages, for their hurts. And I asked for $100 million to be spread throughout Pennsylvania. Not for individuals, but for community building. And then the other legislation I asked her to craft was that racism is a mental health issue. Racism on anybody's part is a mental health issue. And it makes them a danger to who?
Society.
You and to me.
Yes.
That is the parameter of mental health. When you're a danger to yourself and to others. And would you agree that what we've seen demonstrated is a danger, Will Smith, danger to the men and women of color? So I want you to ponder that. I want you to put prayer on it and some research and encourage them to create a bill that creates that mental health issues include racism. And when we can move along those lines, we can open up those services for people to have to wear dashikis, do the Latino salsa, be able to work in a multicultural environment, to be healed from their racism. We got work to do, people. Mental health is not going to take care of itself. We have to usher it in. So I thank you for all of everything that you said and everything that you've done. But our work just begins. So to God be the glory, Reading, Pennsylvania. And then the other part of that homework, I just want you to read the book called The Slaughter. When 3,000 U.S. Army men were surrounded in their barracks and shot dead repeatedly till the blood flowed like a river. And their bodies were collected by the local sheriff and the local police and put into a mountain. But what they didn't know, the mountain was a salt mine, and it preserved every one of those 3,000 bodies. So that when the NAACP got in on the case some 30 years later, they were able to see all those United States military men still preserved and slaughtered. And then I want you to read about the 69 African American boys in 1942, I think it was, that were locked into their dormitory at the industrial school, and they were burned to death. And not the total 69, so there was witnesses to tell the story. So our slaughters didn't just start happening now. The slaughters have been ongoing, but they have to stop now. And it's going to take every one of us to move together in unison as we move down this street, and take our stand. One last thing. We, the people, invite you to become involved with us. We just won the term limits for Reading, the city of Reading. Yes, we just won it. 2,900 people voted to get out those people who've been in there more than 8 years. So there's going to be some changes. So Donna, are you over there? Okay. So Donna's going to need somebody to take her place, and then Stratton Marvin Rue is going to need somebody to take his place. Jeff Waltman is going to need somebody to take his place, and so is Marsha Henderson is going to need somebody. So anybody who has an interest in being appointed for city council, let's get busy and get you oriented and educated so that you can represent the people. To God be the glory. Amen.
Okay, so sorry, you can't be too careful. Okay, we're gonna start marching soon, but I want to ask for some volunteers real quick because I don't think they knew that we were doing this today. Somebody didn't know, so they're up there trying to do work where the barbecue's gonna be, but there's benches in the middle, and they need some people to move the benches out of the way. If anyone thinks they're strong enough, I mean, Jaleel said he's the strongest guy here, so he might as well. Anyway, anybody else? And then, okay. Well, you don't even gotta say anything. Neither are you. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, but before you